All right, this week on Keep Trade Cut, I'm going to try to answer two of the most pressing questions from the beginning of the 2025 season. What is wrong with Bryce Miller, and can you trust any hitter on the Texas Rangers? Now, I don't have time to go into every hitter on the Rangers' pathetic offense. Let's start with the two, though, that were the most highly drafted, the guys that you shouldn't have to be worrying about first week in June, but here we are. Corey Seager, what is going on? Another 0 for 4, that's right, another makes 6 straight hitless games for Seager. 239 batting average. That means he is 2 for 30 since coming off the IL, at least his latest IL stint. This is not what you expect from a guy like Seager. It leads to the obvious question, is he still hurt or something bothering him he's trying to play through? Or is this just a matter of trying to get going because he's had so many disruptions? But he's done this before. I mean, he does this basically every year. Is there a year he doesn't hit the IL? And usually when he does come back, he kind of hits the ground running. I don't know. This is just the Rangers offense just kind of infecting him this year. It feels like every player on that offense has been affected somehow. I don't know if this is just Seager maybe finally showing his age. I don't know if I really want to keep worrying about it. So here's the $1 million question is, what do you do with a guy like Corey Seager right now? Do you sell while you can? You can't call it a sell high because even though his draft stock was high, we're far removed from that, right? You drafted your team 2 months ago, and I don't think anybody cares where you drafted him. Are you able to sell for whatever you can get? Is this maybe even a buy low opportunity? You just have to be patient. I will admit I've probably been a little too optimistic, getting the benefit of the doubt to a lot of these Rangers hitters. Adolis Garcia, I finally dropped him in one of my leagues. Evan Carter, hoping against hope that he would stay healthy and do something. The list goes on, but as far as Seager, I think we need to give him the benefit of the doubt unless we see that he really is still hurt. I mean, sure, he has these really frustrating, sporadic, and fairly regular IL stints. This is just part of what you get with him, but still, last 3 years running in Texas, he's gotten over 30 home runs. Usually hits for average as well, right? All the counting stats to go with it, other than steals. I know this year feels a little bit different, but still, I'm going to say if you got Seager, you might as well just keep him. And I threw this out the other day as far as Jack Caglione, high, big name prospect for the Royals. All the hype that's going with him. If somebody offered you right now, straight up, Cags for Seager, which side would you take? I'm still going Seager. Like maybe I'm just a sucker for the proven commodity. Maybe I have learned over time not to buy into hype. But I am also going to just say I think Seager will get back to being himself, even if it does require another short IL stint, which I hope it doesn't. I still think he comes through in the end. I think you got to trust him. So does that go for Wyatt Langford as well, who does not have the track record? And now we're worrying for 2 years running, was he overhyped and overdrafted? Langford hasn't been as cold as Seager lately, but and that batting average on the year is down to 227. He does have 11 homers and 11 steals, so he is contributing in those categories, but again, for where you took him and what you expected, is that nearly enough? Now, on the one hand, I will say there should be some improvement. His expected batting average is a full 20 points higher. That still just gets him to 247. I mean, we need more than that. All told, though, the peripherals and X stats look pretty good. An 87th percentile hard hit rate. I mean, he's got the speed, he's got the power, he's got the tools, right? That's not the question, is he ready to put together a full-fledged superstar season? Because again, this is what we expect from him right here, right now. Well, I'm just going to say with Langford, I think you got to keep him. You could try to sell, but really, are you getting back something fair for him? I don't think so. I think he'll still be worth keeping. I wouldn't say that I'm going to call him a disappointment. What if by the end of this season, he winds up with a very realistic, according to what we've seen so far, let's say a 250 average, 25 homers, and 25 steals? Would you call that a disappointing season? Well, most people who drafted him really, really early probably would. But I don't think that that's unreasonable to say that, he was worth having. I don't know what you're getting in exchange for him that's going to surpass that. So if you keep your expectations real, then I think you'll be fine. I would just keep rolling him out there. You're getting some homers, some steals. And there is the possibility that this Rangers offense somehow wakes up and then we see a full-fledged breakout. Remember, we did see him come on late last year. It was the final month of the season where everything seemed to finally click. look, if that's what happens again this year, then you'll be happy you held him. All right, let's move away from the Rangers and on to some more of these fringy players that you just don't know what to do. They got off to such hot starts, and now things seem to be crashing down to earth. What about Wilyer Abreu for the Red Sox? Now, I feel like I've talked about Abreu a whole lot this year, and I've kept saying the same thing over and over again. It's time to sell high. The regression's going to come. I already know, and it feels like it's already here. Sure, the season stats look good. He's got 13 homers, a few steals, pretty good in terms of RBI and runs, but he is slipping big time. The rolling xWOBA is not looking good. But the major issue I have with him is one that's not going to be resolved is that he does not hit well against lefties and he just doesn't play against lefties. We've seen the Red Sox sit him repeatedly, even pull him for a pinch hitter when there's a lefty in the game. And that, of course, is going to limit his value. And it makes sense so far in his 30 plate appearances against left-handers, just hitting 192. So what am I going to say about Wilyer Abreu? Same old thing. Trade him while you can. I hope it's not too late. It might be too late, but I said to trade him about a month ago. Look, I have seen, though, some recent trades here I think are actually pretty reasonable, and I would do if I had Abreu. You trade him straight up for Matt Chapman or a Kerry Carpenter. Yeah, I'm going to take those deals. Now I got an interesting comparison for you. Talked about the lefty Abreu, who has suddenly come crashing down to earth after a super hot start. Let's now talk about Kyle Stowers, because it feels like everyone's already just given up on him, right? Jumping ship. No one wanted to buy into him in the first place, and now he's gone through a rough start to June, and his ownership rate is down to like 40%. Now on the season, he's hitting 280. He's got 10 homers, but look at the rolling xWOBA. It's not good. It's not nearly as bad as Abreu's is, but still going downhill. And now he's missed a couple of games because of some sort of a hand issue. I don't think an IL stint is imminent, but of course that is a concern. So you got to wonder, the fact that he's 3 for 15 in the month of June, is it because of this hand issue, or is this something that has just popped up afterwards? It seems logical to assume that this hand issue is the reason for his recent struggles. He was bound, of course, to also show some negative regression, but all told, if you look at his expected stats, everything is super high, and I do think he can keep this going, and he does not have the issue that Abreu does versus lefties. In fact, Stowers, in his 56 plate appearances against lefties, he's hitting 353. He actually hits left-handed pitchers better than he does righties, and Stowers does not sit against lefties because, well, let's face it, the Marlins don't have a better option. So again, I think I find it funny that Abreu, because he's a Boston Red Sox, let's just face it, gets the benefit of the doubt, and people remember his super hot start to the season. Stowers was just as hot, and yet now that he has a bad week, everyone's just done. Like, if I have Stowers, I'm going to keep him. He's not an absolute must-hold in shallow leagues, but still, I think his breakout could be legit, and as long as he avoids the injured list and this hand issue doesn't become something more, I think we'll start to see Stowers go back to being an RBI machine. Do we see the same for catcher Logan O'Hoppe, another hitter who was just bombing left and right in April and kind of kept it going in May, and all of a sudden has gone cold? Well, here's the big issue for O'Hoppe is he's got a pretty dependable backup catcher in Travis d'Arnaud, who's been around the block, and he's actually looking pretty good lately in O'Hoppe's place. Now, this is one of the concerns I raised before draft season with O'Hoppe. Sure, I know he's got 30 homer potential. We know the power's there, but are the plate appearances going to be enough, and is the batting average going to hurt you? Well, the batting average has been fine, right, most of the season, but all of a sudden it's starting to drag down. He's only won for his last 21, an 0.98 average in June, and you got to worry, is he going to start ceding more playing time to d'Arnaud? This is a legit concern. This is not just something that's come up this very week. This was always a concern and always related also to O'Hoppe's plate discipline or lack thereof. This is a pure slugger, and with the home runs, a player like this come the strikeouts, and this is not a player who offsets it by walking a lot. In fact, O'Hoppe's got a 30.1% K minus BB rate. That would be amazingly good if he were a pitcher. This is really bad for a hitter. So O'Hoppe still does have that power, but I'm going to say you could get something comparable off the waiver wire with a guy like Tyler Stevenson, who's probably not going to lose at bats to a backup catcher, and Austin Wells, who's in that Yankees lineup. I don't think you have to keep O'Hoppe and keep playing him through this massive slump. I think you can drop him. All right, now here we go. Let's get to Bryce Miller. Now, this one kind of stings a little bit. Going to be honest, I was a huge Bryce Miller stan before the season started. I called him probably a league winner and a must-have, and every superlative that you could, saying you got to get this guy. He is so dependable and so consistent. And so wrong was I. All right, so what went wrong here? Without going on and on, and this could take up a whole video series in and of itself, let's just cut to the chase. What am I doing with Miller? Am I just going to keep him and hope that things get better? Is it time to ship him off and get what you can? Do you even consider dropping him, which I've been asked several times? Throwing everything I thought before the season out the window, I'm still going to keep him, and not just out of blind optimism. Here's why. The numbers point to just season-long struggles, right? Somehow he has a -2 run value on every pitch type. This isn't just one particular pitch. This is not just a couple of bad starts. He doesn't have a single quality start all season. This has been pervasive. This has been all season long. So how could a pitcher go from being superb with his command, right? Basically a guy who almost never gives up a bad game, to a guy who has not had a good one all season? I think this one we can just chalk up simply to the health. So let's use Miller's own words. It took a while, right? Several bad starts for him to finally land on the IL, which you think may have been just more for rest. I mean, mental rest than anything, along with the physical rest. And then he came back and he still wasn't good. But here's what Miller has said just recently after his previous start, which wasn't so great. And I quote, "It was just something that was like consistently nagging and putting me in kind of a hole from the start. And if I restarted the season, I probably would have said something sooner. But to me, it was just like I felt like I could pitch and I felt like I could get through it and it would go away on its own. And it just wasn't going away." And the reason he didn't say anything and the reason it took so long to go on the IL is because George Kirby was already out. Logan Gilbert then went on IL. He kind of felt guilty, like he had to shoulder the load, and he didn't want to go on the IL. No pitcher wants to miss starts. But basically, he was hurting himself and the team. Now, as far as his last start, right, if he just needed the rest, the physical and mental reset, and he says he feels better, then why was he still not good against the Angels, giving up 5 runs? Well, again, I feel like this injury has just disrupted the flow of his season. He really never got into a groove. From the beginning of the season, it's going to take some time. And I really feel like staying patient is the course here. He didn't pitch that badly overall. It was only until the final couple innings he just made a couple of bad decisions and a couple of bad locations. And I feel like now I'm just making excuses for him. But look, I think he's going to get better. I don't feel like you need to give up on him. You clearly can't trade him for anything of worth right now, but I'm not cutting him. I'm okay if you want to wait and just bench him until you see it happen in person. You see him actually have a quality start. I'm fine with that, but I think you've got to stay patient here. All right, that's this week's edition of Keep Trade Cut. Of course, you got those hard questions you want to ask about your team. That's why we live stream twice a week. Check out the midweek stream on Wednesday and our 2-start streamers. If you didn't check it out already, it's not too late. Pick up some of these pitchers while you can.